Oh, hello, Great Intelligence. What are we gonna do tonight? The same thing we do every night, Snowmen. Try to take over the world! Hello everyone, I'm Papa Kenn and welcome to episode 76 of Discovering Doctor Who. You might notice that the backdrop has changed a little bit, and that is because, well, the basement is a mess right now, and my backdrop is almost entirely covered up with junk. So yeah, at least for now this is what we'll have to deal with, and I apologize if there's any noise with me moving the camera. Hopefully it's not too annoying. But anyway, time to get into things. We're going to be talking about I believe it was the 2012 Christmas special, The Snowmen, The Great Oh no, I'm sorry. It's called The Snowmen, but also talking about the prequel minisodes, The Great Detective, and Vastra Investigates. Now, I always consider the minisodes or the prequels to be separate from the episode itself, so I'll just talk about those real quick. Now, starting with The Great Detective, I thought it was rather interesting. I thought it was a fun little mini-sode, and it definitely set the tone for where the Doctor was at the time. Now, when we technically see him at first, he's just this shadowy figure with a big hat. And I don't know, I thought it was rather interesting, and actually something I'll comment on a little bit later as far as my favorite parts of the episode. But yeah, I found it to be a lot of fun, especially with the trio, Madame Vastra, Strax, and Jenny. I love those characters, and they just in this little tiny, I believe it was 4-minute long clip, it was just wonderful. And then there was also the introduction with Matt Smith and Cole? I'm forgetting the name of the actress that plays Clara. Yeah. I forget the name of the actress, but that little intro was cute as well, intro and outro. Now moving on to the second minisode, Vastra Investigates. I liked it, but it was not necessary at all. I do like how it established that Madame Vastra and Jenny are in fact married, and the old style Englishman's, or well, Scotland Yard, so Scottish guy's reaction to not only Madame Vastra being very openly not human, but then also, you know, the fact that it's two women married. I did find that rather funny, but overall, the minisode as a whole wasn't really necessary. Although it did, I guess, lead into the, you know, oh, it's snowing thing, which is established in the main episode itself. But anyway, moving on from there, it's time to talk about the Snowmen. Starting with my first favorite part of the episode, which was Strax. I couldn't start my favorites list without just starting with him. I can understand how if the characters appear too often, that people might start to get a bit sick of Strax or might not find him funny. But as a whole, throughout this entire episode, and I can't remember if he appears in The Great Detective or Vastra Investigates or not. But anyway, every time he appears in the minisodes and the main episode, I absolutely love it. He is hilarious. I absolutely love the character. So yeah, just without a doubt, one of my favorite parts of this episode. Now the second, I apologize if you can hear water being lapped. That's Charlie upstairs. Apparently very thirsty. My second favorite part of this episode was both Madame Vastra and Jenny. Now, as I already mentioned, I really liked how they established the relationship of the two, and really just basically defined them as being married, and then and then also just as a whole, the two characters play off of each other so well. I'm interested to see how the characters evolve, if at all, as in their recurring appearances throughout the show as I go along. But I could honestly see Also Strax, of course, but these two characters having their own series, even if it's just like a side series or web series even, like, these characters need to have their own little show of sorts, even if it's a bunch of minisodes. I think that they are very well done. Madame Vastra is an excellent, like, very threatening protagonist, and Ginny is very and we learn this by the fact that she can fight, definitely from A Good Man Goes to War. But I mean, she definitely has this air about her that's like, it seems very innocent, very sweet, but you can tell that, right underneath there is someone that will rip your face off if you get in her way. So I really like that, and just both of the characters throughout the main episode itself, I just absolutely loved. Now that brings me to my third favorite part of the episode, which was the Doctor as Sherlock / Scrooge. Now, I definitely got this feel from the prequel, The Great Detective. Just his attitude had a very Scrooge feeling to it, and especially early on in the episode, or the main episode, The Snowmen, he just had this very Scrooge air about him. Basically, trying to hold back his natural persona because of what he's gone through. But I really like that, and I found it interesting because probably my other absolute favorite Christmas special was A Christmas Carol, A Christmas Carol, where he dealt with a literal and figurative Scrooge. So, in him to take on a similar role, no, not exactly, he's not putting people down, but just to take on a similar attitude of seclusion and just not caring, supposedly, I just found that really intriguing. And then, of course, the Doctor playing himself off as a Sherlock-type character, which, of course, is hilarious because Moffat writes for the show Sherlock. And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember exactly where it comes in, but I'm pretty sure that they used part of the Sherlock soundtrack in this episode, or at least sort of a remixed version of the theme in a way, which I enjoyed it. It was a nice little Easter egg, but it was definitely something that was jumping out there like, hey, Moffat does Sherlock too. Do you know what that is? Of course, some of the American audience, they hadn't seen Sherlock yet, wouldn't really get the reference, but that's besides the point. Although I'm sure they would, because basically referred to himself as Sherlock. Anyway, I'm rambling. Time to move on to my fourth favorite part of this episode, which was Clara. But not the Clara that we're going to have as the consistent companion, or maybe it is. I don't know. That's going to be hit on a little bit more in my question of the episode. But yeah, as far as Clara goes, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing her name, but it's much more natural for me to say Clara. So for me, it's like to say Clara sounds to me a bit off. So I'm probably saying it wrong. If so, I apologize. I'll try harder. But anyway, that is all besides the point. I absolutely loved her character. She is such a spitfire. Like, she's basically a complete reincarnation, or maybe an early incarnation of Oswin from several episodes back, or no, at the beginning of the previous season, which was Asylum of the Daleks. No, wait, it was the beginning of this season. I apologize, I'm a little bit mixed up. But yeah, I just found that to be really cool, and the fact that their personalities were so very similar. And then, of course, the Doctor makes the connections himself, which, I don't know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Clara is going to bring to the show when she is a constant companion. I don't know if they're going to be changing the personality much. I don't know what's going to be different exactly when we get to the Clara that's going to be the consistent companion. But as far as this episode goes, she is absolutely brilliant. Dare I say, fantastic. So yeah, I absolutely loved her, and it honestly gives me a lot of hope for what we're going to see from the character moving forward. Hopefully it's not going to be some weird deal where she dies every episode, because yeah, that's going to get really annoying. I was upset when they killed off Clara at the... Well, I thought they killed her off initially when she fell, but, you know, of course, then at the end of the episode where she does die. I was annoyed by that. I was hoping they would keep her as the Clara, but apparently not. Though we did get a little glimpse of the real Clara that's in the future. Yeah, that's in the future, or present day, I guess you would say. But anyway, moving on from there, it's time for my fifth and final favorite part of this episode. And it was the great intelligence and the snowmen. Now, I actually forget the human's name or what they refer to him as. But yeah, the human was kind of well, not an afterthought, but he himself wasn't that threatening in my opinion. I mean, he was definitely a sinister presence, but just, he was a conduit, I guess you would say. Whereas the great intelligence, being able to create these snowmen, and what was her name, the ice governess, or whatever she's called, I just found that to be really intriguing, and I'm interested to see whether or not the great intelligence will make another appearance, because yes, the doctor, or well, Clara's, her crying, or like her final thoughts were strong enough to melt the great intelligence, which was made of snow, and therefore all of the snowmen. But at the same time, if the being is composed of pure thought, no matter how I guess base he gets, or in my opinion, it's like it doesn't seem like that intelligence would ever truly go away, especially if he doesn't have like a completely physical form. To an extent, the great intelligence has to be some sort of psychic entity, and I mean, it may not have a body for a time. It may float aimlessly for quite a while, but why wouldn't it return at some point? So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens there. I'm interested to see, well, maybe not even so much the snowmen, but whether or not the great intelligence will make a reappearance. As for the snowmen themselves, the graphics on those things were pretty darn good, and although I felt that they weren't utilized to the greatest extent, other than just kind of looking threatening and then eating people off screen, I really did enjoy the snowmen. I liked the idea of the snowmen. Oh, and especially in the very beginning where the voice comes from the snowman talking to the little boy that becomes the adult bad guy, whatever his name is. But yeah, it's just like that moment right there was really interesting and very, I don't know, it's just like, it gave me a chill when it first occurred, because I wasn't expecting that at all. I was expecting it to be a thing where it's like one of the snowmen come to life and like eats the kid or something weird like that. But yeah, I definitely really enjoyed that. Sorry for the sudden transition there, my battery died, so I had to make a quick cut. But anyway, so those are my favorite parts of the episode. Time to move on to my annoyances. And I actually only have one, or at least one thing that really did kind of bother me about the episode. And that was the ice governess. Now, on one hand, the graphics around her did look quite impressive. And as a character, she was actually quite... she was very intimidating. You could tell that the kids were afraid of her, which was pretty good acting on their parts. You know, she posed a legitimate threat, even if not so much to the characters themselves, but by forming with the snowmen and the great intelligence, she would bring about this insane ice age. So yeah, like in that regard, she was definitely an interesting and threatening figure. But what they have her say over and over and over again, I honestly can't even remember what it was. I think it was something like, I'll put it in text down here. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they just had her say the same thing, or maybe it was just two things over and over and over again. And I get that the purpose behind that is supposed to be threatening from the kids' point of view, because it's something that she probably said to the kids pretty consistently, and it just put this sort of fear in them. But for me, it got really annoying and made me I was just kind of like, okay, kill her, make her shatter, shut her up, just end her in some way. So yeah, that's really about the biggest complaint I have, is that they made one of the main threats of the episode just really annoying and therefore much more annoying than threatening, or much more threatening, or much more annoying than scary. So, yeah, and I know not all enemies in the show are going to be scary. That's definitely, I mean, that is quite obvious, but yeah, I just didn't care for her overall, although she was utilized rather well in the episode. So yeah, that was my only annoyance. Please do, as always, let me know some of your favorite parts of the episode. And then also, if you had any other annoyances or things you didn't like about this episode, please do voice them in the comments down below, because I would be interested to hear what everyone else has to say, since I had so little negative to say about this one. And literally, it's like I mill it over in my mind over and over and over. I couldn't think of anything else about this episode that bothered me. Unless you want to talk about maybe the fact that they killed the Clara character after just this one episode, just like how they did with Oswin back in Asylum of the Daleks. But moving on from there, it is time to talk about my track of the episode. And I listened to the soundtrack online, listened to it twice, and I could not decide on a single song. Like, the entire soundtrack was amazing. The entire soundtrack for this episode was just blew me out of the water. There were maybe a couple of tracks that were slightly weaker than the others, but as a whole, they were just absolutely phenomenal. If I were to name just like one episode that maybe kind of peaked above the rest, I would say it was probably Who's Enigma, which was the last track on the soundtrack that I found. But yeah, just as a whole, for this episode, the entire soundtrack is the track of the episode. If you haven't seen this episode for some reason, or if you haven't just listened to the soundtrack by itself, I highly recommend giving it a listen, and it's definitely something that's going to be getting put onto my personal collection, basically, whether I buy it in physical form or digital. It's really, really good. Yeah. So moving on from there, it is time for my quote of the episode. And at first, I was going to go with something that just made me crack up, even though it wasn't intended to be a funny line. But it's only funny because of online memes for a show that I haven't watched before, or that I haven't watched yet. And it's Winter is Coming. Yeah, I mean, that's something that the villain says in all seriousness. It's not meant to be a funny line, but it cracked me up because of that meme from Game of Thrones. And yes, I haven't watched that show yet. It is on the list for discovering series in the future. But yeah, that line cracked me up. But it is not the quote of the episode. No. The quote of the episode is a conversation between Strax and the Doctor. And there were so many good lines in this episode. There was so many good conversations in this episode that this was literally probably the hardest I've ever had to pick. Like, completely. It's like, it's definitely in the top 5 of the hardest episodes to pick just one quote for. But the one I picked, I'll do 1 finger for Strax and 2 fingers for the Doctor. Sir, permission to express my opposition to your current apathy. Permission granted. Sir, I am opposed to your current apathy. Thank you, Strax. And if I'm ever in the need of advice from a psychotic potato dwarf, you'll certainly be the first to know. There were so many back and forth lines with that, but just the way, and it's one of the things that cracks me up about Strax, but just the way that he literally repeated himself. You know, he asked permission to say what he just said and then said it again. It cracked me up, and there was just one of so many great lines from him and the Doctor, and yeah, so many great lines. Please let me know what some of your favorites were, like some of your favorite lines from this episode were, because there are just so many to pick from. I'd say everyone could write one down and it might be something different. That's just my guess. But alright, as for my overall thoughts on this episode, it should be completely obvious. I loved it. I absolutely loved this episode. Yes, it was just a Christmas special, but this is definitely, I mean, if A Christmas Carol is my number 1, I would say this episode either possibly bumps A Christmas Carol to number 2, or is a very, very close number 2 to A Christmas Carol. They were just both of them were just absolutely spectacular. And especially this episode, I really, really liked it. It was one of the, I would argue it's one of the most well-written episodes. I mean, definitely some of the best special effects that the show has seen in a long time. And just all of the actors did a great job, including the younger ones, which, you know, sometimes people can say that the younger actors don't do a good job, but the kids that, you know, played the kids that played the younger kids in this episode that Clara was the governess for, they were just great. It was really, really well done, and yeah, I loved this episode. But before I bring this to a close, as I said before, I do have a question moving forward, and it's who or what is Clara? Now, I do have, I am building a theory that I'm going to hold until the next episode, when the next Discovering Doctor Who, to sort of flesh out my thoughts on this theory. But I'm sure there's going to be some overarching theme about her and you know, who she is and what's happening to her. But I'm really interested to find out who she is or what she is. Now, I mean, I'm sure to really mention anything about it would be spoilers, so I don't expect anyone to really say anything, but yeah, that's my question. Who or what is Clara? And coming up next will be the Bells of St. John. Before I bring this to a complete close, however, I do want to say to all of you, everyone that is watching this, all of my Kenvians, you all are amazing, and you have brought this channel to over 700 subscribers. There are over 700 of you that want to watch my videos, and that just blows me away. I really am sorry that, you know, this episode is coming out a day late, but it honestly did. I just felt so absolutely guilty, but I had to take Wednesday off. I had to take Tuesday night off to just relax and recharge, because I've been really busy and really stressed out lately. But I cannot tell you all how much I appreciate what you've done for me, I mean, by commenting on the episodes, by having the conversations. Yeah, sometimes the conversations get heated, but I really do appreciate every last one of you, and I hope it doesn't make me seem, you know, too uppity to call you all my Kenvians, but I just, for so many people to want to watch my videos, to want to comment on my videos, to come together in, you know, whether they're Whovians or not, I just feel like, you know, so many of you have come together around this channel. I can't help but call you Kenvians. I can't help but try and just express my gratitude in some form. And I hope that calling you all Kenvians does do some justice there. Now, but yeah, once more, thank you all so much for bringing this channel to over 700 subscribers. Can't thank you all enough. But yeah, even if this channel doesn't grow anymore from here on out, I never want to not show you all how much I appreciate you and how much you all mean to me. I do apologize that I'm not able to answer all of the comments. There have been a lot that have gone farther back that I just haven't been able to get to. I will try and go back and comment or read some of the comments when I can, but it's been really hard to do so lately. And there's maybe some comments that I won't be able to answer, and for that I apologize, but even if I don't reply, even if I don't thumbs up your comment, which I always try to do to show that I've read your comment, even if I don't reply back, I really do just want you all to know how much I appreciate you for watching my videos and for becoming a little community around my channel. But anyway, yeah, moving on from there. Again, the upcoming episode will be the Bells of St. John, where we'll finally, hopefully, get to meet the final incarnation, I suppose, of Clara, and I get to find out whether or not my developing theory that I have not yet voiced is even on the right possible track. But anyway, everyone, thank you so much once again, and I will see you next time on the next Discovering Doctor Who. Alonzi!